Hello? Shadow control is on the air. Every person in his life repeatedly encounters magic and what is inexplicable. And when faced with this, he often forgets, although the consequence remains. And the question is, what is magic? False or true? Magic exists and it is real. If magic was a fantasy or a deception, it wouldn't have existed for so many thousands of years. And throughout all this time, it has seduced and seduces the masses of people to this day. Magic is the oldest and most numerous religion, the religion of Satan, whose adherents are even atheists. That is why all the prophets at all times said about the inadmissibility of practicing magic, that magic does not lead to hell. And yet, some religions, originally built on the true teachings introduced by the prophets, today openly engage in magic, conduct various magical rituals, offerings, sacrifices. But after all, the prophets did not do this and, moreover, bequeathed not to do it. All these actions are imposed by the devil. Just like begging. Allegedly, God has material goods, health. But the prophets said, it is not worth asking God for anything, except for the salvation of the soul. It turns out that those who had to fight and resist magic openly serve Satan. Why is she so attractive? When people, knowing about the ruinousness, and, nevertheless, exchange the eternal for the momentary, ghostly, material. Yes, the invisible world exists, and it is diverse, like the ocean is full of unknown life. And together with you, friends, we would like to understand a little bit about what magic really is, why it is so tempting, and how the invisible world really works. Hello.
Shadow Control is on the air. Today we have a Brahmin, the author of many books on magic, Igor Mekheda. Hello, Igor.
Hello.
Hello, Igor. Thank you so much for coming to our studio. And the first question I would like to ask you is, in general, where did your path begin as a magician? Right. On what? On the basis of what did the interest in magic arise? We know that this arose in early childhood. Did you have it written yours?
Yes, in fact, it happened a long time ago, when I was a schoolboy. Namely, on the 31st of August of the 75th year. When a lot of my colleagues, acquaintances, classmates, relatives gathered in major cities after visiting the villages, and began to tell what they saw there. And they told that they had heard different beliefs, because they were in every village then. They told about grandmothers who are treated with herbs or conspiracies, told about local legends. And I was so interested in it that I wanted to get as much information about it as possible even then. And literally from the very first grade, I used all the opportunities to go somewhere to some remote village, to some relatives, to talk with grandmothers, learn local beliefs. Then take some interesting legends, myths or, for example, recipes of the same alternative medicine from the literature. And I began to accumulate this knowledge. And for many years I accumulated them, until finally I got a serious base. When I started analyzing this knowledge, I noticed that there are certain patterns in all these phenomena. And it is possible to deduce some laws of these phenomena. In other words, it is a kind of science. It is amenable to scientific analysis, it has its own laws, It can be understood by a person can use it in his life. And then, when I started looking for people who came to the same opinion, I met my first teacher. My first teacher was the son of a high-ranking hierarch of the Orthodox Church, and you know that there is such a thing as esoteric Christianity. That is, one that has expanded, increased knowledge, which, say, has archbishops, patriarchs, popes, and so on. It is significantly different from what ordinary Christian priests know. This is usually a hidden part of Christianity. It is only for high-ranking hierarchs. It is called esoteric Christianity. So my first teacher gave me everything that was possible, and said that this was not enough for my further development. And he then introduced me to an Indian teacher, with whom, as a matter of fact, I studied. My Indian teacher's name was Vijam Sayat with you, and I didn't even have to go to India for this. The fact is that in India, the Brahmin caste is not only priests in temples, they also perform socially useful work. Or are, for example, often prominent scientists and public figures. My teacher was a scientist, a historian, who was invited by the Academy of Sciences of the Soviet Union back then, in order to provide assistance in researching the history of Southeast Asian countries. And he worked at the Academy of Sciences during the day officially as a scientist, and at night he passed on to everyone who wanted to master Vedic technology, Vedic knowledge. I studied with him for 5 whole years, until in 1988, the teacher returned to his homeland. For 5 whole years I studied and others studied, people who comprehended Vedic knowledge, but they left to live and work. Their mission was in other countries. I stayed here and received a task and a mission from the teacher to impart this knowledge to as many interested people as possible. In 1988, I decided to start doing it.
Please tell me, do you also have such a moment of life indicated in your biography, that at some point you had an epiphany during meditation or something like that? And so I wanted to ask you about it. Could you describe this process? Is that what it was? What did you feel? Maybe you saw.
Yes, it was 1981st year. It was the famous Bald Mountain in Kiev. The fact is that I used to know with my mind that there was some reason for being. That is, there is a reason for the existence of the entire universe. We must call him the Absolute, God, each in his own way, the Supreme Mind. That is, it was clear that there was, but there was no contact with the sensation of this source. And contact with this source occurred in 1981st year during a walk on Bald Mountain. It was the introduction of the universe, bright, filled with golden light. And it was then that I first felt, and then only realized that I had actually seen a detailed meditation. From the 12th chapter of the Rig Veda. The 12th chapter of the Rig Veda is the basis of any Vedic philosophy, any Vedic magic. In other words, it is indicated that there is a source of everything from which the world comes, and man, each of us, is an integral part of this source. And in order to feel it, Rig Veda offers meditation. Translating it into modern language, we get approximately as follows: there was no day, there was no night, there was no darkness. There was no light, there was no manifest, there was no non-manifest, there was no finite, there was no infinite, there was no time. There was no eternity. There was only one incomprehensible thing. Do those who live in the highest heaven know him? No, they don't even know the shadows. On this passage from the 12th chapter of the Rig Veda, the Hindu theologian Sri Shankaracharya has developed a meditation through which we eliminate all opposites. For example, darkness has disappeared from the world. What is left? Light. The light also disappears. What remains? Mysterious, incomprehensible, it is not clear what. Time has disappeared. What remains? Forever. Eternity has also disappeared. What remains? Mysterious, incomprehensible, it is not clear what. Finite things have disappeared, infinity remains, and it disappears. What remains beyond them? Again mysterious, incomprehensible, it is not clear what. And when we try to find it, there is such a dizziness, a pleasant feeling in the heart. A feeling that a mystery is spilled all over the world, and then we connect with this source of everything and see a bright golden light. This light is similar to the reflection of the sun, as a sunbeam is reflected from a golden plate, for example, in summer. But only thousands of times brighter, and it permeates the entire universe, and this is called the source. In Hinduism, this is called a Brahman, and from where absolutely everything that exists comes from. And among the Slavic magi, this is called the genera, or the genus of the Almighty. And then this golden light is what we call magical power. As soon as we saw it, it comes to each of us, and then this light can be redirected, for example, to people's health, to a good harvest, to ensure that there is no hurricane, to the fact that there was a good road. Here is receiving this golden light, and directing it to where there is a need for it, so that some good can be done. This is the function of Brahman in any Hindu temple. Well, or by and large any of our magi, who we had in ancient times.
Tell me, with the help of what, it turns out, there is a receipt of this golden ray, or this energy, as for you.
Look, here I have just told you the very first method, based on the 12th chapter of the Rigveda. Meditation, where we remove all opposites, and try to grasp with consciousness what is beyond them. And when we grasp it, here we see this golden light. This is power. As soon as we have seen it, we also receive knowledge, because in fact the soul of each of us contains knowledge received from above. But they are in a dormant state. If we start receiving this cosmic energy, then it turns on. We turn on like this computer, the screen lights up when we plug the plug into the outlet, and so does the person. All dormant knowledge turns on in a person if we connect to a source of cosmic energy. Then we begin to understand how we are arranged, how the universe is arranged, and we understand that the power comes from our contact with the source of everything. And then there are a lot of ways in which this connection can be strengthened. Well, for example, the most famous is the recitation of mantras. Here is the most famous, this is the sacred mantra Om. And when we read Om for a long time, we are connected to the source of everything, we are filled with energy. Another interesting point is yantra. Yantra. This is when you read any mantra for a long time, a pattern appears before your eyes. If this pattern is transferred as a drawing to draw, then it will be a mantra expressed in the image, in colors. Contemplating this drawing will be equivalent to saying a mantra. And in fact, it is called yantra or modula. In fact, everything that we use often in our everyday life. For example, ancient peoples wove carpets. By the way, the Slavs also still have looms in some villages. Carpets, towels, handbrakes. They applied yantras on clothes, on dishes, on the walls of houses, and so that the contemplation of these patterns would allow them to connect with higher energy. Mantra, yantra. Then there is a special state that practices, but almost all spiritual teachings, not only Vedic, stop thought. When a person has no thoughts in his head, a single psychosphere becomes one, we repeat the unity inherent in the Absolute, on some higher manifestations in the higher worlds. And then there is a connection between man and the Absolute. This state looks like there are no thoughts in my head. That is, we realize that we are alive, that we observe the surrounding world around us. But nevertheless the mind does not jump from one thought to another. The state is called thought stop. Well, Castanadians know this state as a stop of internal dialogue. The Vedic traditions of Asia call this the state of thought of the feet. Then there is the connection of bhakti yoga, that is, to send love into the world. To send love into the world, then love makes a circle around the universe in accordance with the law of karma. Returns to the starting point from which it came, increasing tenfold each time. Therefore, I constantly radiate love and goodness into the world, we receive a return of this, which we give to the world again. And again it returns to us. And this wheel allows you to develop a person's connection with the primary source. There is also a request for the manifestation of higher powers in the phenomena of our world, the so-called theophany, and a journey to places of power or pilgrimage to places of power. This is also a contact with the original source. In other words, you see, there are a lot of ways, virtually everyone uses them, not just one, but they try to apply them all.
What is your practice? And in general, how did you realize yourself? That's what the pit is. Do I have abilities? That's how this process happened for you.
But the fact is that the Vedic tradition is a little bit not as suitable as, for example, modern ESP. The fact is that according to the Vedas, every person has an ability, it is given to everyone. And under certain conditions, they can be turned on, developed, it is available to each of us. Moreover, they say that the ancient Vedic society many thousands of years ago, every person was able to do it. And the future will come to the fact that all people on earth will be able to do it again. Each of us has some desires. Someone wants to go to the same India to see, someone Egypt, someone wants to build a country house, grow a garden, make a career. Yes, now there is a problem in connection with pandemics of various diseases. People want them to have good health, they dream of their relatives recovering, those who are sick, yes. In other words, we really have a lot of desires, and we want these desires to be fulfilled. And the first question that everyone is interested in, how to do it. But in fact, it is given to everyone. The universe is so arranged in such a way that our desires can be materialized. Moreover, it is necessary to do this. In the Vedic traditions, practice necessarily begins with the fact that one's desires are launched for realization. How to do it? There is a completely clear scientific method, and it is prescribed not only by the Vedic tradition. In many secret societies in Europe and Asia, this is a cosmic law in general. In order for the wish to be fulfilled, 5 parameters are necessary. The first parameter: a person who makes a wish must be saturated with energy. That is, if a person is tired after work, if he has spent all his energy on some to work, to travel, tired, he does not need to make a wish because he cannot fill his desire with his energy. Therefore, it is best to do this in the morning, when we have had enough sleep, because sleep is nothing but getting energy from the cosmos. We sleep only so that our soul can get enough energy. When we get up in the morning, we are full of energy. This is the first example. Another example. In order to get enough energy, you can go to the place of power. It saturates a person, gives him his strength, pulls him under himself. Or, for example, meditation, doing meditation or some other, well, some are doused with cold water. Some do sports, do a jog there, some practice going to the pit, breathing. Taking prana, energy from the air during breathing exercises. You can even drink some kind of drink, for example, coffee or good tea, which stimulates mental activity, allows energy to rotate better. In other words, we can choose any path, but we must, first of all, be energetically strong. Second, when we raise our energy level, our desire should be represented in the form of a picture. If, for example, this is health, our loved one is sick, then we should imagine that he is already healthy, that he is strong, healthy, smiling, walking on the grass on the green there. Or if it is, for example, so that we have the question of getting a country house in some way. So we imagine that we already have a country house. Or, for example, the signing of some important document. The document we need has already been signed by the responsible persons, it is ready. That is, what we need to happen, we present in the form of a clear picture of the final result. The universe must understand what we are asking of it, what we are trying to achieve. That is, if the house it already exists, if the health the person is already healthy. The third point. We must strongly fill this picture of ours with an emotional experience. I really want this, it will be good for everyone, it will make everyone happy. It must be fulfilled. Emotionally charge the picture. Thus, we get 3 stages. Energetically charge ourselves, make a picture, emotionally charge the picture. This is how we create what is called a thought form. Then this thought form must be given to the universe. Why? Because the universe is intelligent, the universe has its own mind, and the universe can fulfill what it wants, but for this, our thought must become a universal thought. From our psychosphere, it must pass into the higher cosmic mind. Therefore, our desire must be further released into the universe. And in order for our desire to become a universal thought, we must not remember it for a while, forget it. Well, it's very difficult to forget. This is the most difficult thing that people face when they practice this method of wish fulfillment. Because an hour or two passes, and the mind begins to say, "Oh, and how is my wish, did I make it?" And he begins to pull his psychosphere out of the cosmic mind again. And if we do not forget qualitatively, then our desire will continue to walk between the two worlds all the time and never materialize. Therefore, how they avoid not returning to the same desire all the time with their thoughts. They make a lot of them. One, the second, the third in turn. Fifth, 10th. When our psychosphere has generated, sent to the universe, for example, 30, 50, 100 desires. Then the mind has nothing to cling to. He does not understand what to remember, what to control, and prefers not to remember anything that you have made up your mind. And as soon as we have qualitatively forgotten for some time what we have made a wish for, it appears once, and in our life in the most incomprehensible way. In this way, you can arrange your own destiny yourself.
Please tell me if I understood correctly that you have just described in principle the stages through which a person becomes a magician.
Well, yes, it's affordable.
Using magic.
Yes, this magic is exactly what it is. In fact, what I have just described to you, each of us is doing this. After all, each of us has some kind of goal. For example, to get a higher education, find a good job, go somewhere on a trip, find your soulmate. Create a family so that the children are healthy, so that their fate turns out well. That's all we are, each person wants, and goes to it in different ways. That is, he goes to this institute, goes to work, goes on business trips, does not get enough sleep, makes efforts on himself. In other words, we actually set a goal and achieve it. It just shows one of the ways that it is possible not only for us to work on our goal, but for the universe to help us in this. But in fact, we live like this all the time. We set a goal, we achieve it, we set a goal, we achieve, we set it. That's all we're really doing. And here you see 5 parts along the 5 rays of the pentagram.
Could you tell us more about this? What kind of pentagram are the 5 rays?
The pentagram. The fact is that a lot of people argue. A 5-pointed star, what is it? If we take the ancient religions, the 5-pointed star is a manifestation of God in man, and man is quite clearly a pentagram. A head, 2 arms, 2 legs. If we take Hinduism, there are 5 holy Sri Panka tattvas in Hinduism. The mantra Hai Krishnashatani Prabhu Ash, 2 is addressed to them. This is Hakta. This is the main mantra that is used in Vedic worship. For example, how a blessing is placed on a person. A man comes and says, "Bless me, I really need a good road, so that I can get to the eternal destination without adventures. And everything was fine with me." The temple attendant says to him, "Everything will be fine. You have a blessed, successful road." But these are just words. In order for these words to become a real blessing and turn into a real good road, Sri Pankatat is recited 5 times.
In other words, we can say that, let's say, this Hindu practice, it is also based on magical rituals.
Of course, in fact, virtually any ritual in a temple, in a mandir. Well, first of all, where did the word magic come from at all, if we're already talking about it? So, the Absolute gives the world the energy that we receive and use for our life there. This energy is called in different ways: Brahma Jyoti, Prana, Mahaprana, and one of its mana. And one of its names Magga in Sanskrit. That is, this energy that goes into the world from the Absolute. And what does a Brahmana do? The Brahmin takes this energy of the magician in the ritual, in the temple, and directs. For example, they came to him, that suffering people who suffer from some kind of disease. He should receive this energy and redirect it to them, indicating that they should be healthy, for healing. Another person came and said, "I'm a farmer, but I don't have enough harvest, I don't have enough milk, I want to produce a lot more, to feed everyone who wants." It means that an increase in yield, an increase in the milking of the same milk, this is also done by a Brahmin in the temple. This is also a magical ritual. All that the Brahmins do in the temple is magic and is getting energy from Absolutely, and directing it to some useful things.
So you mean that magic, religion, are they related?
Yes, in the ancient Vedic traditions, what is called magic, in Hinduism, For example, how often Buddhism, Lamaism, and our ancient magi have the magic of religion. It's the same thing for them. Because every priest is a magician, because he performs all these magical rituals. There should be no contradictions with Christianity either for one simple reason, among Christians. Among the medieval pentagram was also a sacred symbol, because it is the 5 letters of the name Jesus. And the 5 wounds of Jesus Christ. Christ was designated by a pentagram on all medieval cathedrals. That's why the fact that we are now saying that they are already, some Christians say that this is a sign of some other power. Then it's very surprising to me to listen to it, knowing the history of religion well.
I would like to clarify. What is the difference between black and white magic for you?
Well, here it is really a very interesting thing. What our people call black and white magic is not what it really is. Well, first of all, there are 2 great powers, heaven and earth. Figuratively speaking, the sky is above us, and it is considered to be bright, because the sun is shining. Because light from space goes to earth. Mother Earth has a black color, so the magic that is with the sky, it can be depicted, for example, by the beginning of yang in white, and the earth is black. In ancient times, white and black magic was called true-false, that is, when a person understands what he is doing, and when he does not understand.
And I also understand that you have writings about different circles of magic. Could you tell us about this too?
There is actually, if we take, there is such a thing as ancient secret knowledge. In ancient times, humanity knew it, now it has lost it, but they say that it will return. Every religion, every spiritual teaching, is a set of symbols that are, behind which this ancient secret knowledge is encrypted. In fact, every spiritual tradition has doors or ciphers. Having understood which, having opened the doors, we penetrate there, into that knowledge. It is believed that the Vedic traditions have preserved these ciphers and doors the most. But if we, no matter which way we go, we still come to a single knowledge. Because the universe is built according to a single principle, according to a single law. These laws are not worth thousands, so any door will lead to the same knowledge. It is, let's call it the ancient secret knowledge. That's when a person learns the elements of this knowledge for himself, tries to understand and use it, takes the first steps, wants to help himself, his loved ones, and the people around him. That's one thing. This is the first round. When he has mastered it, he can already. In what especially from the first round? Max usually works with one kind of force. If he invokes, for example, a Gandharva. Gandhar in Hinduism is the same as angels in Christianity. A mediator between the higher worlds and ours. And many sacraments come through the call of the Gandharva. He invokes a Gandharva, one Gandharva. He can invoke some deity, he can recite some mantra, he can recite some sacred sound, amkara, and so on. In other words, he learns to interact with some kind of universal force. This is the first round. When he understood all this, and he had a picture of the universe, he can already go to the second level, which differs from the first, in that there is work not with one force, but with a whole complex of forces at once. That is, not with one color of the rainbow, but with the whole rainbow at once. This is called the second circle, and in order to, say, influence the processes at the planetary level, without exaggeration, on the fate of the peoples inhabiting our planet, the second circle is enough. And the third round, it is already given not so much by the earthly teacher as by the higher teachers. And these are people like Buddha, like Krishna, who were given to go even beyond some planetary processes. In other words, this is the highest level that can be on Earth. The third circle has few initiates, because there is not so much knowledge, as there is a huge responsibility. We see that the fate of the people who were initiates of the third circle, they do not envy, because they had to endure the hardest ordeal, in order to achieve some goal. The first and second circles are enough to live normally on Earth.
And tell me please, in your practice, this is what you use, in general. What is your practice as a magician? In other words, do people come to you, consult, or do you perform any specific rituals? Tell me about this.
Of course, it means that usually people don't just come. Some usually come when they have problems. And in order to help them, we must first identify what kind of problem it is. As a rule, there may be such problems, but what is popularly called spoilage. Here, and scientifically it can be explained like this. We have an energy field, we have an information field. As a rule, for example, someone didn't like us, yes, and then that person takes it and thinks, so that you stumble. First of all, he creates an information module, because he wants me to stumble. This information module enters my information field from its information field. Then, if it remains embedded in its information field, in mine, for a long time, the information begins to spin energy vortices around itself. And then energy vortices create such a situation in the material world that I take and stumble, figuratively speaking. Therefore, if you do not allow someone else's information module to integrate into your field, then there will be no trouble. But we were just taught that all people are good, that no one wants to harm you, that you don't need to defend yourself, that you have to obey everyone, you have to obey the boss there, you have to obey the commander in the army, you have to listen to that. You have to watch all sorts of billboards, trust advertising, and we just have this mentality since childhood. She is determined that she should trust everyone. Therefore, our psyche can build protective contours, but it simply does not do it. And therefore, all other people's information blocks easily enter and are embedded in our field. And the first thing to do is to remove them from there. How? A person must, well, first of all, we must realize that we have free will. And we have the right not to accept other people's programs. We have to go mentally into that state, back in childhood, when no one envied us, when no one put sticks in our wheels, when we really didn't have any hostility from other people. And there in this state, when we were free from everything, to look into the future, and say that I refuse to accept other people's modules, other people's programs, I refuse, I have the right to do so. And it is necessary to shout so that the cosmos shudders, so that all the higher forces hear our inner voice. And then wonderful things will happen. The cosmos supports human free will. This is a law of nature. Therefore, all the built-in modules that are embedded in our field will suddenly begin to line up firm there and return to where they came from. After some time, the information field will be clear, and it looks like on Earth that roads are opening where they were closed before. Here I could not achieve something, but once suddenly it happened, and that's it. The congestion of a person's life was removed, problems were solved one by one. Well, that is, to identify these modules and remove them. But by the way,
Is this your practice?
this is just the beginning, because it's only about other people's information modules, what is popularly called spoilage. Yes. In general, it is very easy for each of us to remove them. That's enough to do this. For example, if someone was thrown into a fever, this is an imitation of a bell striking. Because the first bells, by the way, appeared in Hinduism, then appeared from there, converted to Buddhism, and then only appeared in Christianity. It's not just like that. Destructive forces, evil spirits, yes, are afraid of harsh sounds. The sound of a bell, the explosion of a firecracker, a sharp clap. Therefore, when this happens, they are forced to prove themselves and leave, freeing up space. That's why, by the way, firecrackers are blown up on important holidays in Asia. This is to drive them away. That's what the bells are rung for. The bells on the Ganges have been ringing every day for more than 6,000 years. That is, precisely for this, in order to drive away unfavorable forces from our lives, to leave only favorably. So this is the majority of what they are dealing with. And people also apply, so they want to fulfill, for example, their desires, but they don't know the technology how to do it. So we need to help them perform this technology correctly so that the wish is fulfilled. Protection. It is very important to protect against the fact that different destructive situations do not approach a person. You know, there are people who live all their lives, and nothing happens to them. They never get into an accident, they don't get sick. No troubles cling to them. This means that their defense works well. And there are those to whom all this clings endlessly. This means that there is some kind of problem, and because of which the protection does not work. And it cannot push away unfavorable moments from a person. Therefore, one of my what I like to do is to protect those people, who then turned as much as possible, in all areas.
And how does it work? Well, how do you put protection, for example?
In order for the protection to work, protection is actually very much. But in order for it to work, we need to do what we just talked about. A person should refuse to accept other people's programs. He should also refuse to be controlled from the outside. And it has to be fixed inside him. And only after that, any protection works for 120%. The simplest one, now I'm going to show you, so that our listeners also know how. I affirm the golden light of the highest in the heart plexus of each of us. From this golden light, protective 8-pointed stars move out to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south. To the four corners, to the sky, to the earth. It was not we who put forward these stars, but the highest itself put forward these stars. The task of the stars is to protect, help. That's it. This protection is called ladder protection, or protection of an 8-pointed star. In Sanskrit, it is also called chintamani. It protects a person very reliably from all troubles for 24 hours. Every 24 hours, it is necessary to briefly pronounce this formula.
And what about this one? Did you find out about this spell? Where it came from?
But this is a Vedic spell. The fact is that India generally believes that knowledge was brought to them in ancient times by people from Slavic peoples. That is, on our Vedic Slavic culture, they are now digging up. The Slavs arose immediately after the Tripolitans. About 7,500 years in the Slavic Vedic culture, when there were Magi, and so on. Indian Vedic culture is approximately 6,500 years old. And so there is a lot of evidence that some of the Slavic Magi, knowing that this ancient knowledge would be lost at home, went to Asia and transferred knowledge with them. And as a matter of fact, many thanks to India for accepting this knowledge, preserving it, and now returning it to its historical homeland. Because what we now call Hinduism, and what our ancestors believed in, the Magi are actually the same. Take even the name of the sun god. The sun god Surya in India, the sun god Surya among the Slavs. And a lot of old Slavic Sanskrit. These are related languages. It is clear that this is a single common culture. Therefore, it turns out that the knowledge that is in India is our knowledge. And if we take this knowledge, then like the ancient Slavs, the genus is supreme, the absolute, the creator of the world, in which all the gods and goddesses live like the Almighty. When he created the world, he created the alder stone, an 8-pointed star, and incarnated himself into it. The embodiment of this star is every universe, every galaxy, every star, every planet, every temple, every mountain, every altar in the temple. And inside of us is the pineal gland in the center of the brain and the blood, because our blood is quite clearly a liquid crystal. This stone is a ladder, the universe stands on it, and it is visible as an 8-pointed star. The same thing is said by Hinduism and Buddhism about the sacred stone of Chintamania, an 8-pointed star that a winged horse carries across the sky. The same sign of the Great Spirit is found in virtually all shamanic cultures of Asia, North and South America. This is an 8-pointed star. The alchemical stone of the alchemists, the philosopher's stone, is depicted as an 8-pointed star. In Christianity, the Christmas star. This is also an octagon. Finally, Muslim temples in Iran and Zoroastrian temples. Just like the Hindu mandirs, they are built in the form of an 8-pointed star, around which an octagon is inscribed an octagon. Therefore, octagons are the sign of the Most High. And therefore, when we disassemble this protection even now, we bring this 8-pointed alder chintamani to all sides of the world from our heart chakra in order to receive the most reliable protection. And why with the heart chakra? Because in the development, it is said that the heart plexus is absolutely a place of habitation. In the heart plexus of each of us and in every atom of space,
People often encounter such a phenomenon as the manifestation of some entities and shadows, some kind of collision with spirits. Have you had such experience in your practice?
There are a lot of spiritual beings. Even if we take the same Hinduism, the same Gandharvas, or you may have a more well-known Christian name angels. The same Dharvas are the spirits of the elements, that is, the Vedic tradition of the 10 elements. For terrestrial ones, the air fire, earth, water, and 6 more cosmic ones. Each of these elements is inhabited by intelligent beings whose body does not consist of energy, plasma, like ours. And they can interact with people, these elemental minds. There are simple elements such as fire, air, water, earth, and there are complex elements, for example, a forest, a field, and mountains are composed of these elements. And then we can talk about goblins, brownies, and so on. These are the spirits that live around us. It is possible with them, a person can make friends with them, and live in harmony. There are also so-called evil spirits. These are what are called Rakshasas in Hinduism, demons in Christianity. They are trying to attack a person, but again there are methods for either repelling their attack, or how to form so much pure willpower and spirit that they had no chance to influence a person. It is written that if a person has a strong spirit, then they cannot resist him, and no matter how hostile they are forced to do what he wants without any conditions.
Have you participated in exorcism practices? And you could, if yes, that.
Yes, I have participated in exorcism practices. In 1989th year, such a case occurred in Kiev, and it was filmed on a documentary film. Filmed by the studio Kiev Scientific Film, directed by Viktor Petrovich Lender. It was the first and last Soviet film about magic. It was really the first time the footage of the exorcism was filmed there.
And how in general, is this how it all happens in practice? Here comes a man, he has, I don't know, some kind of a settler, or what you are doing, that is.
Well, look, in order to determine whether there is or not, it means that if a person comes, and he has, say, an ordinary kind of eye or damage, then I have already shown you a sharp pop. A person usually pulls the turf after that and throws it into the heat. This is the first sign that this is a slight evil eye, it can be removed quickly. But if a person comes who has something inside, at this clap, he begins to talk in a voice that is not his own. Or he begins to coward, sweat begins to pour from him, he has convulsions. And that's when we conclude that this is an entity, and then this entity needs to be eliminated.
And how do you eliminate it?
But the fact is that there is a lot. Well, you've seen different raging churches that go from year to year, and there they still twist and do not help them. The fact is that simply, if we take the cosmic laws, treat it honestly, then the essence can never sit in a person. If a person has done everything right, that is, if a person is not to blame for anything, the essence cannot enter him. If the entity has entered, it means that the person has done something wrong.
And could you say with your position, what is a person doing wrong?
Yes, I can tell you the case that I had the most vivid of it, and you have repeatedly asked me on television to comment. Our parapsychologists even published a book about it. It was the 90s. A woman came who, after I gave her a howl at the session, was brought to me by other specialists. She started talking in a man's voice, and I asked, "Who are you?" He says, he says, he says, Mao Tzu, the Chinese Satan. What are you doing there? He says, well, I'm sitting here, and I like it here, I'm sitting here. I started making different expulsions. He began to make Vedic expulsions with mantras, singing bowls. There we have but exile in Hinduism. Then we tried it with Christian prayers, and Taoist ones, Chinese Satan, and all religions that only exist. He also repeated all the prayers, drank holy water and so on. And moreover, he predicted the future at the same time. He says, tonight on the news, this is going to be told. Turn on the news. That's the way it is. He foresaw events, then he tells me, he says what he says, he did not teach his students that when before eating food, it is necessary to make a drawdown out of it, to offer it in a higher power. I say, He taught, then he says, this is your student, he went there to fight with some sorcerer. He says he didn't light up the borscht, he says, and now he ate it unlit, and now he has witchcraft there. So tell him, teach him to do it. For him to offer food. That's what the demon tells me through her mouth. I come to my student, I say that my stomach hurts. Yes. Says he didn't light up the food. Yes. He says, how did you know? He says, and he says, a familiar demon told me. The demon knew everything, read all the services of all religions. I'm saying you've been sitting there for 3 months. Every time she came to the session, it turned on and her mind turned off. I say, why are you sitting there? But the editor killed our man, and did not repent. I think, well, as always, they are deceiving these creatures. When she came to, I say, you know, de Monver said that he would not leave you if you did not confess to the murder. Did you kill someone? Yes, he says, his sister. And how was it? She says, we were dating the same man, I thought she was a competitor to me. I shoveled her over the head in the garden in the evening, and buried her under the gooseberries. And she says it so calmly, you know, calmly. That's where the essence came in at that moment. Well, then they know the laws. They know that he has the right to sit there, because after such an act, he really has the right to sit there for any religion. But I tell them, you know what, go, I say, to any church, and there are Christians there. When you go to any church and say all this in confession. If they let you have it, I'll kick him out. She went, there was a young priest. When she hears this, he feels bad himself. He told her, go to the police if they don't open a criminal case against you. She comes to the police at night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, tells it all to the officer on duty. They thought she was joking at first. They sent a group, dug it up in the Kiev region, dug up a corpse under a gooseberry tree. She was taken to an insane asylum and examined, and psychiatrists concluded that the murder was committed in a state of affect. She could not be responsible for her actions. And thanks to this certificate, the criminal case was not opened. My sister was buried with dignity. She came and told me all about it. This priest took a confession from her. After that, she came to me. One mantra, and he flew away. That's it. That is, in order for the essence of a person to sit down, it first needs to kill someone with a shovel. Well, that's something, that's what I mean. The fact that we, for example, drank a glass of water there wrongly or something else, the higher powers do not punish for this. This has to be, well, completely out of bounds.
That is, in order to, let's say, expel such beings and entities. Nothing.
The exorcism will turn out immediately. Any kind of exorcism, any religion can be applied. First you need to look, just like that, the essence of a person does not sit down. She sits down only as a result of some kind of fracture like this. Here it needs to be identified, and help the person to remove it all. And then, yes, then.
And the person himself can do it.
I think it can. I think it can, but it depends, of course, on the degree of development of this person.
In your practice, yes. How does it happen there? For example, a person there addresses you with some kind of request. What are your feelings there? States before and after the session. Is there any difference?
Well, I use it for diagnostics. You see, our physical body actually knows everything. I'll explain. The fact is that if we take the Vedic theory of time, time does not exist as linear, it exists as a vortex. A vortex that affects the near past, the near future. That is, approximately what was 2 or 3 days ago, and will be 2 or 3 days ahead. This is a vortex formed. Therefore, what will happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, is already in the vortex of time. Yes, what will happen in 6 months, the vortex of time has not been formed, we can form it with our desires and rituals. What happened, what is needed there? But what will happen tomorrow is already quite clearly known in the time vortex. From the time vortex, this information can be extracted by our physical body through the second chakra. The second navel chakra is Sudarshan. It can receive information from the vortex of time, reliable, what will happen tomorrow, and transmit it to the physical body. Therefore, you need to trust your physical body. Strangely enough, it knows tomorrow's future better than our assumption of the whole mind combined. That is, in fact, our body is able to receive information from space. What's going on? Then, but how to bring this information to the mind? That's why there are, for example, white frames, pendulums, tarot cards, and other oracles. All these oracles are designed only to bring reliable information out of our body so that the mind can see it. In fact, our body knows everything. That's why we give a request and it outputs all the information about our patient from space. This person has a pain here, it hurts here, there is a problem, there is a problem. This chakra is blocked, it is open. And we see the whole picture, which is voiced to a person, that you have such problems. Technologies, how to remove problems. Problems are removed, everything works out for a person. First comes, as a rule, the removal of obstacles, cleaning. Then, when a person is clean, the next thing already goes. Rituals of making wishes, there are blessings for a career and so on. And then, already laying down on a clean basis, this happens. That is, as a rule, but these are two large parts of the work. Purification of protection and formation of takeoff.
What is the difference between the state before and after? Is there a rise in strength? Is there a decline in strength?
Me or the client?
You, the client.
Well, look, real magic, it works. And how is it different from ESP? She doesn't work by her own strength. That is an example. If you go to a psychic firm battle, he is, as a rule, a person endowed by nature with some kind of superpowers, super energy. He treats his client, gives him good energy. But the client's illness can take over. This is especially true for female magicians. Then he again gave up his energy and took over the disease. Then, when he has picked up a lot of diseases from many people, he himself needs help, he himself can collapse. This is if we follow the path of extrasensory perception. Magic doesn't do that. For example, in the same ritual of the temple mandir. All the services of all religions of the world are magic, by the way. Although some deny it, but it's really nothing but magic. For example, I can summon a higher power, appeal to the same absolute, or summon the same Gandharmas, or recite mantras. Activate the powers of gods and goddesses. And this impact will go from them to both the client and me. In other words, it's even interesting here, if Max accepts a client who has the same problem as him, and heals this client. Then he is cured of it, gets rid of this problem himself. And any number of people can be accepted, because the force that acts, it comes from outside, and it comes from above. You're not working with your own strength. The only thing you can do when you let a lot through yourself with this force, the body gets tired. Yes. What is it like to be under high voltage current all the time? After a while, there is fatigue, but also not because you have wasted your energy, for simply not being able to stand it. Tom needs to be given the opportunity to recover for some time and continue to work.
Are there any requests that you can refuse? Well, according to some personal principles, beliefs.
Well, the fact is that even the most perfect magic priests, they are not omnipotent, and well, they can't do everything. After all, it is not the absolute itself that creates worlds. Every person has a limit of possibilities at this moment. You know, even shamans in Asia. They periodically gather for a meeting of shamans and determine specifically who is the most powerful of them in this meeting. Because it is also a sinusoid force. One day this shaman has a peak of strength, and the other one is at the very bottom, and the next day it's the other way around. And every day, every shaman has a different energy. That's the same thing, the possibilities are different. So that's why I naturally can't do everything, but I do what I can. In order to understand, there is a request for a blessing. That is, he is the highest bless. Here is a person who wants to do some work for him. If there is a blessing, there is pressure on the head, a pleasant warmth in the heart, and the person who asked it. It suddenly begins to feel good. This means that I have been shown that we can easily solve this problem, it is in our power. If suddenly there is a cold in the heart, or there is no blessing, it means that we will not solve this problem. It means either there is an unfavorable energy situation right now, or some kind of incorrect request, and therefore, until it changes, they will refuse the blessing.
And have the clergy addressed you? This is also interesting to know. From which faiths you were approached, what you taught them, what methods to communicate, with what requests they are.
The same thing. The fact is that there are official positions of some religions, yes, who are afraid of magic like fire. Why are they afraid of magic like fire? This is generally understandable. Because, what is magic? This is the theology, the practical theology of the older religions, which they once supplanted and took their place. Therefore, for them, it is like a competing corporation. They naturally do not want competition, so they say that it is not necessary to do this. In other words, this is the official position of many religious organizations. Here. But the clergy themselves want to use these principles for themselves to understand how the universe works. And they apply for training, of course, behind the scenes. That, let's say, if a person comes from a Muslim country, such as Iran, or the United Arab Emirates, before studying, and then he says that he went to study magic, then most likely, well, at least they will be put in prison for this for religious reasons. And there are countries where he can still be burned at the stake for this, so naturally they do not do it openly. They cannot do it openly. But what are they learning? That's what they learn. But, by the way, in India, I have seen a lot of priests of different cults, who there in civilian clothes attend, say, the same RT ceremonies in Haridwar. And I approached many of them there and told them what we were doing here. Only in the patriarchate, so that they don't know. Here. In fact, if we take theology, the theologies of different religions do not differ much. The ritual, yes, is different. Well, the position, the official position of the church is different. The political position of the churches is different. There are contradictions between them there, not because they understand God differently there. Everyone understands God in approximately the same way, but because there is a struggle for financial flows, for political influence, which has nothing to do with God.
You know what else I wanted to ask, but do you use any additional, well, attributes of some kind, talismans or maybe some devices for rituals?
Of course. First of all, there are ritual clothes, because, if you have seen, every Brahmin who performs some rituals, he wears them. Most often you have seen Brahmins in orange clothes. It is typical not only for India, for example, for Cambodia. There are also many Hindu temples there. But those Brahmins who wear the orange robe are those who have accepted the dinner of celibacy, that is, they have refused to marry. Those who have not completely abandoned worldly activities, that is, they are allowed to engage in business, and have a family and all that. But then, of course, they don't wear orange. They can serve in blue, white, and gold. Well, depending on what kind of holiday.
Is it purely symbolic, or is it really necessary for something there, some processes?
This is necessary for some processes. I will also explain why priests of all religions and secret societies should wear these robes at all, which few people understand. Even if we look at how our world works, it consists of atoms. Each atom has a nucleus around which an electron cloud rotates, and in fact an alternating current. Zero phase. This is actually a zero wire. It is an analog of the center of the atomic nucleus, and the phase wire is an analog of an electron cloud that rotates around. And whatever we take, the whole world consists of some central point around which there is a vortex movement. Let's look at the sky. There is a polar star around which the stars rotate in the sky during the night. Therefore, the polar star is called the axis of the world by all shamanic peoples and practices. The swirling of the whirlpool, again the eye of the typhoon, where everything is calm, and then rages around the typhoon. It goes around the eye of the typhoon in a circle. This is how virtually everything works, including the energies of our world and magical energies. Therefore, if we want to have some impact on the world around us, well, for example, there is a hurricane. We need to prevent it so that it does not damage the crops. or there is no rain for a long time, and it needs to rain to attract clouds, then it is necessary that the one who does the ceremony, the priest or the monk, becomes the center of the vortex, and the whole universe turns into a vortex around him. Then he can direct him to the right event. And for this, he must be isolated from these forces, and be in the center of events. Isolated from everything that is happening around. The mantle is the first thing it should do. It should be an insulator that separates, figuratively speaking, the nucleus of an atom from an electron cloud, or the one who controls the vortex from the vortex. For this, strictly speaking, this is the main reason why they wear these robes, so that they are always in the center of the world, at the core of everything.
So this is your ceremonial attire, right?
Yes, this is my ceremonial attire, delusional, ritual, in which the largest ceremonies take place. An ordinary ceremony, can I conduct it in ordinary clothes?
And which ones? Yes, by the way, it would be interesting to know what kind of rituals. What?
I conduct all the rituals performed by priests of all religions. Hinduism has them too. Naming, blessing, wedding, confession.
Is this relevant in Ukraine?
Confession in Vedic traditions is not the same as in Christianity. If in Christianity you tell a priest aloud everything that happens to you, and can sometimes tell some secrets, they are all priests. Then they can keep their mouths shut. Then the Vedic tradition is a meditative confession, where my task is to introduce a person into meditation, and so that he tells everything necessary there to these higher forces. And he returned from there cleansed. I don't know anything. And in general, he or one Brahmin does not know anything about what the person was talking about there. It turns out to be a real confession, because the problem is really removed. Yes, because if you listen to everything that people say every day, because the same thing happens to everyone. In the morning, we got up, had breakfast, took a shower, went to work. And this, if you listen to it every day from thousands of people, the psyche will not last long, in fact, for anyone.
Yes, Igor Vladimirovich, please tell me, here you have brought an interesting book with you. Tell me about it.
Yes, this book is one of the real sensations. The fact is that if you remember, for a very long time, everyone was arguing about whether Shambhala exists. In fact, our civilization, which is on Earth, it is not the first, far from the first, and not the last. It is believed that our civilization is 108th, there were 107 more before us. They spent how they passed some kind of development cycle, either went to live in space, flew to other planets, or opened a door to a parallel world. The Earth is like the cradle of civilization. Here civilizations are born, reach some higher level, and go on to live in the universe. And the Earth, like a kindergarten, gives birth to a new civilization, and a new one. It is believed that ancient civilizations knew that they were not the last on Earth, and left their representatives in secret places of our planet to oversee the development of new civilizations that will be later. Among them, Rari said, there is such a country as Shambhala. No less interesting country is Ogartha, which is also very much talked about. Well, there are a lot of them in Tibet, Shangri-La, Omoluring. This is only in Tibet, and also Altai, the Blue Mountains, Belavati, and, let's say, a country like El Dorado in South America. That is, there are many such abandoned countries, mystical countries, left by ancient civilizations on Earth. Representatives of ancient civilizations live in them, helping the one that is ours now, in whatever way they can, so that no catastrophes happen, and they will help those civilizations that will be after us. This, in fact, is the knowledge of the kingdom of Ogartha, because the Buddha was in Ogartha, and he repeatedly said that he was there, and even brought from there the teaching of Kalachik millet, sacred to Buddhists. Here Ogartha once passed on her knowledge to the Indian Brahmins. Indian Brahmins are the knowledge of the Arab tribes. The Arab tribes were brought to the Kabbalistic scholars, and the Kabbalistic scholars were brought to the secret orders of Europe. And thus this book has reached our time. You know that I am not an Arab. The numbers we use, they are not Arabic after all. The Arabs took it from ancient India, they admit it themselves. These are Indian figures. And that's actually what the knowledge of this very Ogartha, which was originally, tells us. Each digit has a strictly defined ideological meaning. For example, this is the sun, this is the initial course of energy in the universe. This energy is already balanced in two forms of vortices. Yes. Then it's a contact between the worlds. 3. The 4 is already the structure of man and the structure of the solar system. It is absolutely painted ideologically, why each figure looks like this, and what it has to do with our world. The most interesting thing is that we can learn from this book. There are mathematical models here. Yes, modern mathematical models, which are now so-called. Take a look, you can look through it. In the technology phase, if anyone knows. In the technology phase, this is mathematical modeling of fuzzy sets. It wasn't possible before. Now it is possible to model. It turns out that it is possible to model a person's thinking, the economy of a particular country, a recession and production. Or vice versa, an increase in production, yield, where on what place on Earth there will be, say, earthquakes, typhoons. All of this can be created as a mathematical model. When this order, which had this book, turned to me that the time had come to publish it, we thought for a long time. And still decided to release it. She will do it very hard because she had to match the original. The originals of these books were in 3 languages, Latin, Spanish, and Hebrew. It was necessary to translate it into Russian, and do it this way, then print it so that the black pages are covered with ground paint. And then a fraction of a millimeter in a fraction of a millimeter of luminous paint, so that it can glow from candles.
And why is the Book of Shadow called?
Why shadows? Because that's how it's always been done. This is the knowledge of the deity through his shadow properties. Many religions believed that it is impossible to go directly deep into the absolute, because you will burn from its light. There is too much light. Therefore, one can study the deity by his reflection, or by his shadows in the physical world. In other words, these are the shadows of God. That's why it was done that way. Here there are mathematical models of things about which it would seem there can be no mathematical model. A mathematical model of creative thinking, various discoveries of the spirit, meditation. The connection of the human spirit and the divine, a mathematical model of exorcism. A mathematical model of healing that a folk healer does. That is, there are models here that, it would seem, well, it can't have a mathematical model, but it is. And here the secret knowledge of Gartha is encrypted. And how is this book, how is it received? The candle is lit completely at night in a dark room, and the text and the drawing begin to glow in the dark from the candle flame. And even there is a feeling that there is no book, and the text and drawings just hang in front of you in the air. You need to read aloud 60 of these pages with drawings, look at the drawings, read, you don't think about the meaning. After that, there is a deep failure, deep meditation, and then the person falls asleep. After this failure, various knowledge and abilities begin to appear in his mind by itself. And a person begins to gain abilities, and understands how things work and how to do what. In other words, here is this book of dedication, and this is the dedication of that very Gartha.
Thank you very much for sharing and showing for our viewers. Very interesting. Why do you think people have such a great interest in magic?
Well, because it's knowledge. In fact, it is knowledge. It was among ancient civilizations and will return to us. Why? Because with the help of this knowledge, you can make your life better. You can answer the question, how does the universe work? How am I organized? What should I do? That's what I want to achieve. How do I achieve this? That's the magic that gives answers to these questions. How to achieve, what to include, where to look for an answer corresponding to the challenge of our time. The fact is that all of these techniques that I talked about, making wishes and so on, many prophets of many religions openly gave them to people. And what did they want? They wanted if everyone gets these technologies and makes their life happy, then it will be that all people on earth will become happy. Everyone will make a paradise for themselves, all the paradises will turn on together, and there will be a paradise on earth. But that's what these prophets thought. And then there were still strong rulers, different emperors there, different elites there, who took this knowledge for themselves, and did not allow others to use this knowledge in order to rule, and so that nothing would change for the better. And now there is still a question of making this knowledge universal again. Since the age of Aquarius has already begun to come, then in the age of Aquarius, this knowledge will be universal, accessible. People can use it for good. Therefore, interest in this will increase. There are even predictions that this knowledge will be scientifically confirmed. By the way, some of them have already been scientifically confirmed. They will be studied in schools, taught at universities, they will study it, they will explain how it works. In the future it will be. I think even in our lifetime, the elements of this will already begin.
Thank you again for the interview. It was very interesting and informative. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, it was very interesting to talk. I watch your broadcasts of all palaters, especially the Creative Society. It's a very, very interesting idea. I like it, and especially how different people relate to this idea. Because this is exactly a creative society. This is exactly what it needs to be built. Because the ancient magicians dreamed of a creative society. Every creator, everyone creates something, and together there will be a paradise on earth. This is absolutely the right idea, which should be supported and implemented in every possible way.